Some songs are just so much more than music. They're prayers, they're poems, and they're stories that have echoed through centuries. So today, we're going to go beyond the melody and uncover the deeply human stories, the faith, the struggle, the hope that gave birth to these timeless songs.
That's such a powerful idea, isn't it? These aren't just words meant for a page, to be read silently. Nope, they were created to be sung, to be lifted up by the human voice in moments of total joy, deep sorrow, and worship. It's a tradition that connects all of us across thousands of years.
And really, that's the big question for us today. These songs feel so eternal, so permanent, but they were written by real people, living through very specific moments in time. What drove them? What were they feeling? Answering that is how we can truly understand their power.
So, let's start at the very beginning, the foundation, the ancient Psalms. These are some of the oldest songs in the entire Western tradition, and their influence is, well, it's absolutely monumental.
Think of the Book of Psalms as kind of like the original hymnal. It's this collection of 150 songs that cover the entire range of human emotion, from pure ecstatic joy to the absolute depths of despair, and all of it is directed towards God. For ancient Israel, this was the heart and soul of their worship.
I bet you've heard this line before. It's the opening of Psalm 23, and it's one of the most famous, most beloved passages in the entire Bible. It's just such a powerful declaration of trust and of peace.
To us, today, it might sound like a simple, kind of rustic image. But for the people who first sang these words, the shepherd wasn't just some poetic idea. It was a deeply powerful symbol of survival, of guidance, and of complete and total trust.
You have to understand, for an ancient Israelite, a shepherd was everything. They didn't just guide the flock, they protected it. We're talking from wolves, from lions. They found it food and water, and they knew each and every sheep by name. The flock's entire survival depended on that shepherd. So when the psalmist calls God their shepherd, they're saying God is their ultimate protector, provider, and guide. He's their source for absolutely everything.
So for centuries, the Psalms were the bedrock, but, music evolves, and eventually a new kind of song started to emerge, one that built on this ancient tradition but spoke with a new, much more personal voice.
Can you imagine going to church and the only songs you ever sang were those 150 Psalms straight from the text every single time? That was just the reality for a very, very long time. It was definitely reverent, but for some people, it started to feel a little restrictive.
And then, along comes Isaac Watts. This is the man who would change everything. He looked at these congregations just reciting ancient texts and saw this huge missed opportunity. He believed that people should be able to sing about their faith in language that felt personal and direct and, alive.
And the change he started was just revolutionary. Worship shifted from just repeating these ancient texts to expressing timeless truths in a way that everyone, not just the scholars, could really understand and feel in their hearts. He basically handed the singing back to the people.
All right, now let's dive into maybe the most famous hymn of all time. This is a song whose power comes directly from the astonishing life story of the man who wrote it.
The author of this beautiful hymn about grace was a man named John Newton, and his backstory is, frankly, it's shocking. He wasn't just some guy who made a few mistakes. He was a slave trader. But his life was completely upended by a terrifying storm at sea, an event he was convinced was divine intervention. It sparked this dramatic conversion that eventually led him to become a minister and a powerful voice for abolishing the very trade he once profited from. What a journey!
So when you hear these words, knowing his story, they just hit differently, don't they? He wasn't just speaking in metaphors here. He literally saw himself as a wretch who had been saved. He felt he truly was lost and blind in his former life, and that this grace had given him new sight.
And what's so incredible is that this song wasn't written for some global audience or for the history books. It was deeply personal. Newton just wrote it for a single sermon on New Year's Day to share his unbelievable story of redemption with his small congregation. That's where its power comes from, that raw, unflinching honesty.
Okay, now we turn to a collection of music born not from a single person's transformation, but from the collective suffering and the unshakable hope of an entire people.
Spirituals are a uniquely American art form. They were forged in the terrible crucible of slavery, combining African musical traditions with the Christian faith. But these were so much more than just songs of worship. They were cries for deliverance.
You see, enslaved people deeply, profoundly identified with the story of the Israelites held in bondage in Egypt. The story of Moses leading his people out to the Promised Land, that wasn't just some ancient tale to them. It was a powerful, living symbol of their own desperate hope for freedom.
And this is where the story gets even more fascinating. Because these songs had to be sung out in the open, often right in front of overseers. They developed this kind of secret language, a code, hidden right there in plain sight.
Just look at this. To an outsider, a song about a sweet chariot coming to carry you home. That just sounds like a song about going to heaven. But to those who are in on the secret, the chariot could be a reference to the Underground Railroad. And the Jordan River? That wasn't just the biblical Holy River. It was code for the Ohio River, the physical boundary between the slave states in the South and freedom in the North. These songs were maps, they were messages, and they were prayers, all at the same time. For a long time, this was purely an oral tradition, passed down through generations. But after the Civil War, groups like the incredible Fisk Jubilee Singers took these spirituals on tour. They preserved them and they showcased the profound beauty and power of this music to the whole world, making sure these voices would never be forgotten.
So, when you step back, you see this powerful thread connecting all these songs across millennia. From the timeless comfort you find in the Psalms, to the deeply personal story of redemption in a hymn like Amazing Grace, and finally, to the collective, unbreakable hope of freedom that rings out in the spirituals. Each one speaks to a fundamental human need.
It really leaves us with this one last thought. Whether it's an ancient psalm, a personal hymn, or a coded spiritual, these songs last. They endure because they tell our story, the human story of fear, of hope, and of that unending search for meaning. Thanks so much for listening.